Revenge with Karen.
I knew the exact moment Haven Bridge Consulting went from being a fortress of strategy to a house of cards held together by hair gel and nepotism. It wasn't a bang. It was the squeak of a $2,000 Herman Miller chair. I've spent 20 years in this game. I'm a senior client strategist. That means I'm the one who tells Fortune 500 CEOs that their baby is ugly. But for a $5 million retainer, I can put lipstick on it. I don't smoke, I don't drink before 6 p.m., and I value loyalty like it's a non-fungible token in a market crash. But when the board announced the restructuring, I felt the shift in the air pressure. It smelled like expensive cologne and impending litigation. By the way, if you're into watching corporate titans trip over their own egos while I narrate the disaster, go ahead and hit subscribe and maybe drop a like. Fuels my caffeine addiction and keeps the legal team nervous. Seriously, do it now, because things are about to get ugly. The new CEO, Douglas Crane, walked in like he was auditioning for the role of guy who embezzles the pension fund in a straight-to-streaming movie. He was 42, had teeth so white they violated OSHA regulations, and spoke exclusively in LinkedIn buzzwords. Synergy, paradigm shift, disruptive innovation. The guy was a talking TED talk that nobody signed up for. He didn't care about our legacy clients. He cared about optics. In my line of work, optics is usually code for lying with a better font. I tried to give him a chance. I really did. I'm a professional. I've worked with sociopaths, narcissists, and guys who think reply all is a power move. I can handle a little ego, but Douglas was different. He brought in a transition team, pack of 20-something MBA grads in slim-fit suits who looked like they'd sell their own grandmothers for a verified checkmark on Twitter. They started prowling the hallways, taking notes on tablets, asking questions that didn't make sense. Why do we archive physical contracts? Can we streamline the billing through the Cayman subsidiary? Red flags started popping up faster than weeds in a neglected garden. I walked into the break room on a Tuesday, which, for the record, used to be stocked with actual food, not just wellness shots that taste like dirt and sad kale, and overheard two of Crane's frat boy minions talking. Crane says the Q3 numbers need to look robust for the investors, one said, aggressively stirring stevia into his coffee. Robust or creative? The other laughed. Let's just say we're maximizing the realized potential of future earnings. I stirred my black coffee and stared at the wall. Maximizing realized potential of future earnings. In English, that means booking money we don't have yet. It's the kind of accounting magic that gets people fitted for orange jumpsuits. But I kept my mouth shut. You don't survive 2 decades in Manhattan consulting by barking at every shadow. You wait, you watch, you collect receipts. The vibe in the office shifted from quiet confidence to paranoid silence. People stopped making eye contact in the elevators. Closed-door meetings became the norm. My access to certain shared drives started glitching. IT issues, they said. Right, and I'm the Queen of England. I started noticing that my legacy clients, companies I've nurtured for 10 years, manufacturing giants from the Midwest who value a handshake over a Zoom call, were being reassigned to junior partners. When I asked Douglas about it, he gave me that smile, the one that doesn't reach his dead, shark-like eyes. Marian, we need you on the macro level, he said, leaning back in a leather chair that cost more than my first car. You're too valuable to be bogged down in the day-to-day. We're pivoting. We need fresh energy on the legacy accounts too. Disrupt their stagnation. Disrupt their stagnation, I repeated, keeping my voice flat. Douglas, those accounts are the bedrock of this firm. They pay the light bill. They don't want disruption. They want consistency. Consistency is the enemy of growth. Marian, he said, tapping a pen against the mahogany desk. Get with the program or don't. But the firm is moving forward. I left his office with a cold knot in my stomach. It wasn't just the disrespect. I can handle being sidelined. It was the sloppiness. He was moving pieces around the board without knowing what they did. Then came the invoice. I was reviewing the budget for a project I was technically still supervising, massive logistics overhaul for a shipping conglomerate. I saw a line item for $250,000 paid to a vendor named Obsidian Solutions. I know every vendor in this city. I know the caterers, the printers, the data analysts, the forensic accountants. I had never heard of Obsidian Solutions. I pulled the digital file. The service description was vague, strategic consultant retainer. I dug deeper. The address for Obsidian Solutions was a P.O. box in Delaware. The point of contact was a generic Gmail address, and the approval signature, it was a digital stamp. Specifically, it was the digital stamp of the CFO, a man named Marcus who has been with the firm for 30 years and usually audits lunch receipts if they go over $20. I walked down to Marcus's office. He looked tired. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in a month. When I asked him about Obsidian, he flinched. Actually flinched. It's a special project for Douglas, Marcus stammered, not meeting my eyes. Just leave it alone, Marion. It's above our pay grade. I'm a senior strategist, Marcus, I said, leaning over his desk. Nothing is above my pay grade when it comes to my client's budget. What is Obsidian? He looked at the door, then whispered, it's a pass-through. That's all I can say, just, for your own sake, drop it. I walked back to my office, fluorescent lights buzzing like angry hornets in my ears. A pass-through, a shell company, a fake vendor billing $250,000 for nothing, and the CFO was terrified. I sat in my ergonomic chair and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. The sun was setting, turning the glass buildings into pillars of fire. Most people would have polished up their resume right then. Most people would have called a headhunter. But I'm not most people. I don't run from a mess. I clean it up. Opened a fresh notebook, paper, not digital because paper can't be hacked, and wrote down 2 words, Obsidian Solutions. The comfortable order was gone. The war had begun. And Douglas Crane had no idea he just declared it on the wrong woman. There is a specific kind of nausea that hits you when you see your own name signed to a lie. It's not like the movies where the music swells and the camera zooms in. It's quiet. It's a drop in body temperature. It's the realization that your identity, your professional soul, has been hijacked. It was 3 weeks after the Obsidian discovery. I was still digging, quietly, manually cross-referencing vendor lists with state registries on my personal laptop at home. But in the office, I played the part of the obedient soldier. I smiled at the frat boys. I nodded during Douglas's manic town halls. I was biding my time. Then, internal mail bot dropped a notification in my inbox. Document processed. Q3 Compliance Assurance Client. Omega Systems. Omega Systems. That was one of the accounts Douglas had stripped from me. I hadn't touched an Omega file in 2 months. Why was I getting a processing notification? I clicked the link. The document opened. It was a federal compliance certification, stating that Omega Systems had met all environmental and labor standards for their new government contract. It was a heavy document. If you sign this and it's false, you don't just get fired, you get fined by the EPA and investigated by the DOL. I scrolled to the bottom. There, in crisp digital blue ink, was my signature. Marion V. Sterling, dated yesterday. I froze. I stared at the screen until the pixels started to blur. I didn't sign that. It wasn't even in the building yesterday at the timestamp listed. I was at a dental appointment. I have the receipt. I have the numb jaw to prove it. Someone had accessed my digital signature file, which is supposed to be encrypted and password protected with 2-factor authentication, and slapped it onto a document that smelled radioactive. I didn't scream. I didn't throw my stapler. I went into crisis mode. This is what I do. I assess the damage. I identify the breach, neutralize the threat. I printed the document. Then I walked straight to HR. Our HR director, Linda, was a woman who treated conflict avoidance as an Olympic sport. She had a smile that looked like it was painted on and an office filled with inspirational posters about teamwork and resilience. Linda, I said, closing the door and locking it. We have a problem. I laid the document on her desk. I didn't sign this. Linda picked it up, adjusting her glasses. She looked at the paper, then at me, then back at the paper. Well, it's your signature, Marion. The system logs show you accessed the file at 2:00 p.m. I was at the dentist at 2:00 p.m., I said, my voice icy. Check my calendar. Check the building security logs. I didn't swipe in. Linda sighed, the kind of sigh you give a toddler who won't eat their peas. Marion, are you sure you didn't just forget? We've all been under a lot of stress with the transition. Douglas mentioned you've been seeming a little scattered lately. The word hit me like a slap. Scattered. That was the narrative. They were seeding it. I am not scattered, Linda. I am the most organized person in the zip code. This is forgery. This is fraud. I want a forensic audit of my login credentials. Linda's smile faltered just for a second. A flash of fear, or was it annoyance? Let's not use words like fraud, Marion. That's very aggressive. Maybe it was a system glitch. I'll have IT look into it. I don't want IT to look into it. I want a formal record that I am disputing the signature. I'll make a note in your file, she said, dismissing me. But honestly, Marion, making a fuss about a glitch. It doesn't look like team player behavior. I walked out of HR knowing two things. 1. Linda was useless or complicit. 2. They were setting me up to take the fall. If that Omega contract went south, it was my name on the line. Douglas wasn't just greedy. He was insulating himself with my reputation. The isolation ramped up immediately. It was subtle at first. Conversations stopped when I entered the break room. I'd walk in, and 3 junior analysts would suddenly become very interested in the coffee machine. Then, the meeting invites stopped coming. The Monday morning strategy huddle disappeared from my calendar. When I asked the admin, she said, "Oh, Douglas wants to keep the group small for efficiency. He said you're focusing on internal projects, code for dead man walking." I sat in my glass-walled office, feeling like a specimen in a jar. They were watching me. I could feel it. Then came the phone call. It was on my personal cell, an unlisted number. "Is this Marion Sterling?" A male voice. "Ruff, who is this?" "I'm calling from Redfield Logistics. We used to work together back in 18. Remembered Redfield? Good people, I remember. What can I do for you?" "Look, I shouldn't be calling. But someone reached out to us yesterday, said they were your associate, said you were transitioning out of the firm and wanted to move our account to a new holding company for tax efficiency." My blood ran cold. "I never authorized that. I figured," he said. The guy sounded slick, too slick. He sent over some paperwork. It looked like Haven Bridge letterhead. The routing numbers were weird. I threw it in the trash, but I thought you should know. "They're using your name, Marion. They're shopping your reputation to move money." I thanked him and hung up. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from rage. Pure, unadulterated, white-hot rage. They weren't just forging signatures. They were impersonating me. They were using the trust I built over 20 years to funnel clients into their shell companies. I looked at the framed photo of my father on my desk. He was a union rep in Detroit. He taught me that you don't cross a picket line, and you don't let bullies win. Douglas Crane thought he was playing 4D chess. He thought he could gaslight me into quitting or frame me for his crimes. He forgot one thing. I know where the bodies are buried because I'm the one who designed the cemetery. Opened my bottom drawer and took out a burner phone I'd bought with cash 2 days ago. It was time to stop playing defense. If you've never sat in a disciplinary hearing for something you didn't do, let me describe the ambience. It feels like a Kafka novel directed by Michael Bay. Loud, stupid, and surreal. It was a Tuesday morning. I found a calendar invite titled Performance Review added at 8:00 a.m. for an 8:15 a.m. start. No prep time, no agenda, just a room number. I walked in. Douglas wasn't there, of course not. Douglas doesn't get his hands dirty. Instead, it was Marcus, the sweaty CFO, and Linda from HR, looking like she just swallowed a lemon. "Sit down, Marion," Marcus said. He wouldn't look at me. He was focused intensely on a folder in front of him. "What is this, Marcus?" I asked, remaining standing. "I had my annual review 3 months ago. Top marks. As always. Leadership, new metrics," Linda chirped. "We found some discrepancies." Marcus slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of a database error log. "According to this audit," Marcus mumbled, "you misfiled client data for the Peterson account. Sensitive financial data was left on an unsecured server. That's a breach of contract. A $3 million exposure risk." I laughed. A dry, harsh sound that bounced off the glass walls. "The Peterson account. Haven't had access to the Peterson files since Douglas revoked my permissions last month. How could I misfile data I can't even see?" "The logs show your user ID," Linda said, tapping the paper. "User ID doesn't lie. User IDs can be spoofed, Linda, especially by the admin who controls the server." I leaned forward, placing my hands flat on the table. "You are framing me, and you're doing a sloppy job of it." Marcus finally looked up. His eyes were bloodshot. Looked like a man holding a grenade with the pin pulled. "Marion," he said, his voice dropping to a rasp, "please, just listen." He slid another folder across. "We're prepared to offer you a severance package. 6 months salary, full benefits for a year. We frame it as early retirement. You go to the Hamptons. You relax. You've worked hard. And if I refuse, then we proceed with a formal investigation into the data breach," Linda said, her voice hardening. "Gross negligence. Termination with cause. No severance. And we'll have to report the breach to the Industry Licensing Board. You'll never work in consulting again." The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed. It was a bribe wrapped in a threat. "Take the money and shut up, or we destroy you." I looked at Marcus. I saw the fear in him. He knew what was happening. He knew about Obsidian Solutions. He knew about the fake signatures. He was just the bagman. "You think you can buy me?" I asked, my voice deadly quiet. "You think 20 years of integrity is worth 6 months of pay?" "It's a generous offer," Marcus pleaded. "Marion, the wind is blowing a certain way. You can't stop it. Just get out of the way." I picked up the severance agreement. I looked at it. Standard legal boilerplate. A non-disclosure agreement buried in paragraph 4. "Sign here to sell your soul." I dropped it back on the table. "I don't want your money, Marcus. I don't want your retirement. I want to do my job." "Marion, am I fired?" I asked. "Not yet," Linda said. "We're placing you on administrative probation, pending the investigation results." "Good," I said. "Then I'll be at my desk." I walked out. My legs felt like lead. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I went straight to the elevator, rode it down to the lobby, and walked out the front door. I didn't stop until I was 3 blocks away in a crowded park. I sat on a bench next to a guy feeding pigeons. The normality of it was jarring. They were going to kill my career. They had the access, the power, and the lack of morals to do it. If I stayed and fought internally, I'd lose. They owned the referees. I needed a bigger gun. I pulled out the burner phone. My hands weren't shaking anymore. A cold resolve had settled over me. It was the same feeling I got before a massive client pitch, the moment the nerves vanish and the predator takes over. I dialed a number I had memorized from a late-night research session on the Tor browser. "Department of Justice, White Collar Crimes Division," a voice answered. "Automated menu." I waited for the operator. "Federal Bureau of Investigation, New York Field Office," a woman said. "I want to report a massive fraud involving federal contracting and shell companies." I said, "I have names, I have dates, and I am on the inside." "Who is this? Call me." "Deep client," I said, feeling ridiculous but cautious. "Ma'am, I need a name." "My name is Marion Sterling," I said, taking a breath that tasted like car exhaust and freedom. "And I work for Haven Bridge Consulting. You're going to want to record this. Spy movies make espionage look sexy. It's all martinis and tuxedos and high-tech gadgets that fit in a fountain pen. Real-life espionage. It's sweat stains, dry mouth, and pretending to care about a spreadsheet while you covertly copy a hard drive. It's terrified that the IT guy named Kevin is actually a counterintelligence genius who's watching your keystrokes. My handler was a special agent named Miller. We didn't meet in a parking garage. We met at a hipster coffee shop 4 blocks from my office, kind of place that charges $7 for bean water and plays obscure indie folk music. Miller looked like a barista, flannel shirt, beard, laptop covered in stickers. But his eyes scanned the room like a radar dish. "Keep your voice down," he said, staring at his latte. "You look tense." "I'm stealing financial records from a man who probably has a hitman on retainer," I hissed, sipping my tea. "Sorry if I'm not zen." "Did you get the batch files?" "I got them. They're on the encrypted drive." I slid a generic-looking USB stick across the table under a napkin. "It's worse than I thought, Miller. Obsidian isn't the only one. There are 12 of them. 12 shell companies." Miller didn't blink. He just palmed the drive. "Talk to me." "They're using a layering technique," I explained, slipping into my professional mode. "Haven Bridge gets the legitimate government contract, say, for infrastructure consulting. Subcontract 40% of the work to a specialized vendor. That vendor is a shell. That shell subcontracts to another shell. By the time the money hits the third layer, it vanishes into offshore accounts in the Caymans and Cyprus. And the actual work, it's never done. They're billing the Department of Defense for strategic analysis that consists of copied and pasted Wikipedia articles." Miller's jaw tightened. "How much?" "Conservative estimate, 40 million in the last 6 months. He let out a low whistle. "Okay, this is good, but we need the link to Crane. We need to prove he's directing it, not just signing off blindly." "He doesn't sign anything," I said. "He uses digital stamps. He uses Marcus. He uses me. We need a direct communication," Miller said. "An email, a recording. Something where he explicitly orders the fraud. He's careful. He speaks in code." "You need to make him break code," Miller said, looking me in the eye. "You need to push him, make him angry. Angry men make mistakes." Walking back to the office was like walking into a lion's den wearing a steak vest. Every time I swiped my badge, I expected the light to turn red. I expected security to tackle me, but the light turned green. I went back to my desk. My administrative probation meant I had no work to do, but I had to be physically present. Psychological torture. I spent my days looking busy. I opened old files. I rearranged my desktop icons, and underneath it all, I ran the capture software Miller gave me. It was a background script that logged network traffic coming from the executive suite. The paranoia was eating me alive. One afternoon, Douglas walked past my glass wall. He stopped. He looked at me. He didn't smile. He just stared, like a biologist observing a dying insect. I stared back. I didn't blink. He tapped on the glass with his signet ring. Clink, clink. Then he walked away. My heart was thumping so hard I thought my blouse was moving. Does he know? Does he suspect? I checked the capture script. It had pinged. A large file transfer from Douglas's terminal to an external server. I opened the packet data. It was encrypted, but the metadata was visible. Subject, project clean sweep. Attachment, termination list, NAV PDF. I felt a cold sweat break out. Clean sweep, termination list. I wasn't just investigating a fraud ring. I was on a clock. They were planning a purge. And I knew with absolute certainty that termination didn't just mean firing people. It meant erasing evidence. And I was the biggest piece of evidence walking. I needed that recording. I needed to get Douglas in a room and make him say the quiet part out loud. I had to do it before clean sweep swept me into the gutter. They say a man's home is his castle. But for a corporate whistleblower, home is just another location to be compromised. The office environment had degraded from hostile to active combat zone. On Thursday, I arrived to find my office empty. My ergonomic chair, my mahogany desk, my framed diplomas, gone. In their place was a folding table and a rusted metal chair, shoved into the corner. My computer was sitting on the floor. Office reorganization, the office manager mumbled, refusing to look at me. Douglas needs your office for a meditation space. He kicked me out of the office I earned over 20 years so he could pretend to be mindful while robbing the taxpayers. I sat in the rusted chair. It squeaked. I powered up my computer. Access denied. Your credentials have been suspended pending the investigation, a pop-up read. I was sitting at a folding table with a bricked computer, in the middle of a hallway where everyone could see me. It was a public shaming. They wanted me to quit. They wanted me to run out crying so they could say she was unstable. I pulled out a paperback book, The Art of War, and started reading. I turned the pages slowly. I let them stare. Let your plans be dark and impenetrable as night, and when you move, fall like a thunderbolt. At 3:00 p.m., Douglas stopped by my desk. Comfortable, Marion. Cozy, I said, not looking up from the book. Less pretension, I like it. We lost the Kincaid account today, he said casually. They cited lack of strategic vision. That was your account, wasn't it? I haven't spoken to Kincaid in 3 months, Douglas. You gave that account to Brad. If Brad lost it, that's on you. Brad says you poisoned the well before you left. Badmouthed the firm. He leaned down, his expensive cologne choking me. It's tortious interference, Marion. We could sue you for the lost revenue. Millions. Do it, I said, finally meeting his eyes. Discovery would be fascinating. I'd love to see the emails Brad sent Kincaid. Douglas's eye twitched. You're playing a dangerous game. You think you're smart, but you're just old and you're in the way. I left at 5:00 p.m. sharp. I took a different route home. I checked for tails. I switched subway cars at the last second. Miller had taught me well. When I got to my apartment on the Upper West Side, the air felt wrong. I live alone. I know exactly how I leave things. I leave my blinds angled at 45 degrees. I leave my throw pillows in a specific diamond pattern. The door was locked, but when I pushed it open, the throw pillows were square. My breath hitched. I walked in slowly. Nothing looked stolen. My laptop was there. My jewelry was there. But my bookshelf, the books were pushed back an inch. I went to the kitchen. The spice jars were out of alphabetical order, sriracha next to cinnamon. Someone had been here. They hadn't taken anything. They had just touched things, moved things. It was a message. We can get in. You are not safe. I wanted to scream. I wanted to vomit. The violation was so intimate, so creepy. It was gaslighting on a physical level. I checked the vents. I checked the smoke detectors for bugs. I found nothing. They were professionals. I remembered the go bag. Years ago, my father, paranoid union guy that he was, told me to always keep a burn file. If you work with money, Marion, keep a copy of the truth where nobody can find it. I went to the freezer. Inside a bag of frozen peas, wrapped in 3 layers of Ziploc and duct tape, was a USB drive. It wasn't the new stuff Miller and I were collecting. It was the historical data, the baselines, the proof of what the firm used to be, the moment the numbers started to drift. I had backed it up 6 months ago, just on a hunch. I thawed the peas. I plugged the drive into my personal, air-gapped laptop, Wi-Fi card physically removed. The data was there, and looking at it with fresh eyes, I saw it. The glitch in the Peterson account, it wasn't a glitch. It started 6 months ago. Douglas had been siphoning money before he was even officially CEO. He was cooking the books during the transition. His drive proved premeditation. They broke into my house to find this, and they missed it because they were looking for safes and hard drives, not frozen vegetables. I poured a glass of wine. My hands were shaking, but I forced myself to drink. "Okay, Douglas," I whispered to the empty, violated apartment. "You want to come into my house? Let's see how you like it when I burn yours down." The summons came on a Friday morning. Emergency board meeting, 10 o'clock a.m. Attendance mandatory. I knew this was it, the clean sweep. I dressed for a funeral, black pantsuit sharp enough to cut glass. Silk blouse, red lipstick, war paint. I walked into the boardroom. The entire board was there. 12 men and 2 women who controlled billions of dollars and probably hadn't bought their own groceries in a decade. Douglas sat at the head of the table. He looked grave. Sad, even. The performance was Oscar-worthy. "Thank you all for coming on short notice," Douglas said, his voice dropping an octave to simulate integrity. "We have a crisis. A cancer in this organization." He clicked a remote. A slide appeared on the massive screen. It was my face. A photo taken from my ID badge, blown up to graininess. Next to it, unauthorized data exfiltration and client poaching. "We have uncovered evidence," Douglas lied, "that Marion Sterling has been systematically stealing proprietary client data. She has been feeding our pricing strategies to competitors and attempting to lure our legacy clients to a solo practice she plans to launch." The board gasped. Actual gasps. These people were sheep in wolves' clothing. "This is a lie," I said. I stood up. I didn't shout. I projected. "This is a fabrication to cover up. Sit down," Douglas roared. "You have done enough damage." He clicked the remote. Fake emails appeared. Emails sent from my account to a competitor, offering trade secrets. "We caught these in the server logs," Douglas said. "IT was able to intercept them before they caused fatal damage. But the intent is clear." He looked at the chairman of the board. "I recommend immediate termination for cause, forfeiture of all stock options, and immediate legal action." The chairman, a man named Sterling, no relation, just irony, looked at me with disappointment. "Marion, do you have anything to say?" I looked at Douglas. He was smirking, a tiny, imperceptible curl of the lip. He thought he had won. He thought he had crushed me. I had to play the part. I had to let him think the kill shot had landed. I let my voice tremble. I looked down. "I gave my life to this firm." "And you betrayed it," Douglas said smoothly. "Security is outside. Please hand over your badge and phone." 2 security guards, and to cops I'd said good morning to for 5 years, stepped in. They looked ashamed. "I'm sorry, Miss Sterling," one whispered. I took off my badge. I placed it on the mahogany table. It made a hollow clack. "You're making a mistake," I said, looking at the board. "He is lying to you." "Get her out," Douglas snapped. I was escorted out, the walk of shame. We walked past the open plan office. Everyone watched. The junior analysts, the frat boys, the admin staff. Silence. I held my head high, but I let my shoulders slump just enough to sell the defeat. They walked me to the lobby. They took my building pass. "You are banned from the premises," the head of security said. "If you return, you will be arrested for trespassing." I walked out the revolving doors into the humid New York air. I stood on the sidewalk. I looked up at the glass tower. I was fired, disgraced, stripped of my equity. My phone, the burner, which was taped to my inner thigh, not the company phone I surrendered, buzzed. It was Miller. "Did they do it?" "I'm out," I said. "They took the bait. I'm officially a disgruntled ex-employee." "Perfect," Miller said, "because now, legally, you have no expectation of privacy regarding the company, and neither do they. Is the warrant ready?" "The judge just signed it, but we need one more thing. The physical server backup. The one in the server room. The cloud data is good, but if they wipe the physical drives, lose the metadata trail." "I know," I said. "Can you get back in?" I looked at the building. I looked at the security guards watching me through the glass. "Douglas thinks I'm broken," I said. "He thinks I'm going home to cry. Are you?" "No," I said. "I'm going to Starbucks to get a triple shot. Then I'm going to break into my own office. Marion, if you get caught. If I get caught, I'm trespassing. If I don't, Douglas goes to federal prison. I like those odds." I turned and walked away, but I didn't go home. I went to the coffee shop across the street. I sat by the window. I watched. I waited for the lights to go out. Douglas thought he had taken my keys, but he forgot that I was the one who authorized the security system upgrade 3 years ago, and I kept a master key card. Not digital, physical. The fake death was over. The resurrection was scheduled for midnight. Midnight in a corporate high-rise is a ghost town. Air is recycled, the silence is pressurized, and the only light comes from the emergency exit signs, casting a blood-red glow on the carpet. I bypassed the lobby sensors using the service entrance in the loading dock. My old master keycard, the one I lost in 2021, still worked on the physical locks. Douglas's tech bros were so obsessed with cybersecurity, they forgot to change the tumblers on the back doors. Amateur hour. I moved through the hallways like a shadow. I wasn't wearing my heels anymore. I had changed into sneakers. I reached the 40th floor, the executive suite. My heart was hammering against my ribs, but my hands were steady. I went to the server room first. It was cold, loud with the whir of cooling fans. I found the main rack. I located the physical backup drive, a black box the size of a toaster. I plugged in Miller's cloning tool, a small black box with a blinking green light. 0% complete. And percent complete. Come on, come on. I heard a noise in the hallway, the jingle of keys, security patrol. I froze. I crouched behind the server rack, hugging the warm metal. The door opened. A beam of a flashlight swept the room. Check the temp, a guard's voice said. It feels warm in here. It's fine, let's go. I want to finish the round so we can eat. The light swept over my head. I held my breath. I became part of the machinery. The door closed. The lock clicked. Exhaled, 100% complete. I grabbed the cloning tool. Step 1 done. Now for the hard part, Douglas's office. I needed the recording. Miller said we needed him breaking code. I knew Douglas held late-night strategy sessions with his inner circle on Fridays. He thought the office was empty. He thought he was safe. I crept toward his office. The door was ajar. Light spilled out. I could hear voices. Douglas and Marcus. Pulled out my phone, the burner, and hit record. I slid it carefully under the gap of the decorative planter just outside his door. Then I waited. She's gone, Douglas. It's done, Marcus was saying. He sounded drunk, but the audit trail, the Peterson files, they're still messy. Burn them, Douglas said. His voice was clear, arrogant. Wipe the physical drives tonight. Run the magnetic degausser. I want nothing left by Monday morning. That's destruction of evidence, Marcus whispered. There's no evidence if there is no investigation. Douglas snapped. Marion is discredited. Nobody believes her. We have the due contract. The money is already in Cyprus. We won, Marcus. Stop whining and wipe the damn drives. And the kickbacks to the senator already processed. Under consulting fees for Obsidian. It's clean, gotcha. My heart soared. He admitted it. Destruction of evidence. Money laundering. Bribery of public official. It was the royal flush of federal crimes. I retrieved my phone. I had to get out. But as I turned, I knocked into the planter. Thud, the voices stopped. What was that? Douglas asked. Probably cleaning crew, Marcus said. I fired the cleaning crew on this floor. Go check. Panic. Pure primal panic. I didn't run. Running makes noise. I slipped into the adjacent conference room, the boardroom where I was fired 12 hours ago. I rolled under the massive mahogany table. I heard Douglas's footsteps. Heavy. Angry. Walked into the hallway. Hello? He stopped right outside the conference room door. I could see his shoes, Italian leather. He pushed the door open. The light from the hallway cut a slice across the carpet. He stood there for 10 seconds, 10 lifetimes. Nothing, he grunted. Must have been the building settling. This place is old. He walked back. Just wipe the drives, Marcus. I'm going home. I waited 5 minutes, then 10. I heard the elevator ding. I crawled out. I walked to the server room. I knew Marcus was in there, about to wipe the drives. I didn't need to stop him. I already had the clone. Let him wipe them. It would only prove intent to destroy evidence. I slipped back down to the loading dock. I walked out into the cool night air. I hailed a cab. Where to, lady? The federal building, I said, and step on it. Monday morning. The day of the New Horizon investor presentation. Douglas had rented out the ballroom of the Ritz-Carlton. He went all out. Champagne breakfast, giant LED screens, hired models to stand around and look innovative. He was looking for $100 million in Series B funding to expand operations. He thought I was at home, crying into a box of tissues. Or maybe calling a lawyer who wouldn't take my case. Didn't know I was currently sitting in a black SUV with Agent Miller and a tactical team from the FBI. You ready? Miller asked. He was wearing a suit now. He looked like a Fed. I was born ready, I said. I was wearing my best suit. White, the color of purity, the color of mourning in some cultures. Remember, Miller said, let him talk. Let him dig the hole. We move on your signal. What's the signal? You'll know. I walked into the ballroom at 10:15 a.m. Douglas was on stage. He was glowing. He had a headset microphone. He was pacing like Steve Jobs. And that is why Haven Bridge is not just a consulting firm, he was saying to the room full of bankers and investors. We are a vessel for the future. We have cleared out the dead wood. A pause for laughter, a few chuckles, and we are ready to soar. I walked down the center aisle. My heels clicked on the marble floor. Click, click, click. Heads turned. Room went quiet. Douglas froze mid-gesture. He saw me. His smile faltered, then returned, tighter this time. Well, he said into the microphone, it seems we have a crasher. Security, I'm not crashing, Douglas, I said. My voice carried. I didn't need a microphone. I'm here to correct the record. Ladies and gentlemen, Douglas said, addressing the crowd with a pitying look. This is Marion Sterling, a former employee. She's unwell. She was let go for ethical violations. Only violation, I said, continuing to walk toward the stage, is the $40 million you funneled through Obsidian Solutions. A murmur went through the crowd. Douglas's face went red. Get her out of here now. 2 security guards started toward me. I stopped. I reached into my purse. The guards flinched, thinking, what, a gun? I pulled out a USB drive. I held it up. It's all here, Douglas, the shell companies, the fake signatures, bribes to Senator Hawkins, and the recording from Friday night where you ordered Marcus to wipe the servers. Douglas laughed. It was a shrill, desperate sound. You're delusional, you're a thief and a liar. I fired you. You didn't fire me, I said calmly. You freed me. I looked at the side door. Now, I said. The doors burst open. FBI, nobody move. Agent Miller walked in, badge raised high. Behind him, a dozen agents in windbreakers swarmed the room. Investors gasped. Chairs scrapped against the floor. Douglas stood on stage, his mouth opening and closing like a fish. This is a mistake, he screamed. She's the criminal, arrest her. Miller walked up the stairs to the stage. He bypassed me and went straight to Douglas. Douglas Crane, Miller said, his voice booming. You are under arrest for wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy to commit destruction of evidence, and identity theft. You can't do this, Douglas sputtered. You know who I am? Yeah, Miller said, pulling out the handcuffs. You're the guy who messed with the wrong whistleblower. I stood at the bottom of the stage. Douglas looked at me as the cuffs clicked. His eyes were wide, terrified. The shark was gone. He was just a minnow in a net. Marion, he pleaded. Marion, tell them. We can work this out. I can pay you. I can. You should sit down, Douglas, I said softly. You're going to be standing for a long time during arraignment. Sound of a CEO hitting the floor is surprisingly quiet. Douglas didn't faint, but his knees gave out when Miller read the part about the RICO statutes. He slumped against the podium, the headset microphone creating a screech of feedback that made the billionaires cover their ears. The room was chaos. Investors were frantically texting their lawyers. The board members, the same ones who had looked at me with such disdain on Friday, were trying to blend into the wallpaper. I saw the chairman trying to sneak out a side exit, only to be blocked by a female agent who looked like she wrestled bears for cardio. Please remain in the room, she said. We have warrants for all electronic devices. The look on the chairman's face was worth every second of the last 3 months. I watched them march Douglas out. He was weeping. Actually weeping. Snot and tears ruining his $5,000 suit. Looked at me one last time as they dragged him past. There was no hate in his eyes anymore, just confusion. He couldn't understand how he lost. He had the money, the power, the lack of morals. He didn't understand that some variables can't be put in a spreadsheet. Marcus was arrested in the lobby. He had tried to run. He didn't get far. He was already spilling his guts to an agent before they even got him in the car. I walked out of the ballroom. Miller caught up to me. You okay? He asked. I'm unemployed, I said, but otherwise, I feel fantastic. You're not unemployed, he smiled. The DOJ has a reward program for whistleblowers. 15 to 30% of recovered funds. If the fraud is 40 million, I did the math. That's a hell of a severance package. You earned it. We couldn't have done it without the recording. Thank the planter, I said. I walked out of the Ritz-Carlton. The sun was high. The city was loud. I took my phone, my real phone, which Miller had returned to me, and checked the news. Breaking: FBI raids Haven Bridge Consulting. CEO arrested in massive fraud scheme. My LinkedIn notifications were exploding. Headhunters, competitors, reporters. I turned the phone off. I went to a small dive bar on 9th Avenue. It was noon. I didn't care. I ordered a whiskey neat. I sat in the booth and toasted the empty air. To my dad, the union rep, extinct legacy clients, to the ergonomic chair I'd never sit in again. I wasn't a strategist anymore. I wasn't a victim. I was the woman who burned the castle down to save the kingdom. The bartender wiped the counter. Rough day, I took a sip. The burn was perfect. No, I said, smiling for the first time in months. Best day of my life. I finished the drink, left a 20 on the bar, and walked out into the New York traffic. Douglas Crane was going to prison, and I was going to lunch.
Has a funny way of teaching lessons at the office water cooler. Today's story just reminded us that patience usually outlasts arrogance. Thanks for staying with me out. I'll see you in the next one.